What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news. And today, we are here with some injury updates for the Lions and for the Green Bay Packers. We've been getting these updates throughout the night on who's going to play, who's not going to play, who's expected to play, how many snaps is the guy going to get. We need to do a quick little update video. There's been a lot of information put out there. Some of it's been put out, retracted. Other information goes out, which is very understandable. It's a short week. There's really no live practice, so all of it's estimated walkthroughs. So I can understand why it'd be difficult to really gauge where a player's status is at. But it seems like right now we have a lot of key updates with some of the key players for this game. So let's get it started. Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, man, we are back with a little injury update, man. I hope this video is not super long. I do plan on doing a pregame show today as well. We may have a preview video drop before that. It may be a little bit on the shorter side, but I'm still kind of working on that in the background. So stay tuned. If not, we'll just do it through the pregame show. Maybe it's a little bit longer. And then, of course, we'll be here tonight to react to this game live. Just another watch party. Y'all know how it is. Just want to go through some of these injury updates that we have across the board that we know so far with both sides. I'm sure more information is going to go out there as the day goes on, as we get closer to the start of this game. But right now we have some key injury updates. It sounds like we know on some of these top players who's going to play and who's not going to play. Some great news that we need to kick this thing off with. We go back to the Seattle game where we came out of that game, tons of injuries, tons of players banged up, guys hitting IR, and we still have a lot of players that seemingly are going to miss. We added Matt Nelson to injury reserve as well. Dan Skipper goes back to the practice squad, but he was also injured. He came out of our last game. We put Colby Sorstel in. Like the offensive line, specifically the tackle position, our depth was really struggling. But we have some massive news today. Taylor Decker is expected to play for the Lions. He's expected to suit up tonight. Now, Taylor Decker did say that, he expects that it's going to hurt, but he can deal with the pain. So it does sound like Taylor Decker is going to get out there tonight and play, which is absolutely huge because, honestly, I don't even know who would have been our starting tackle tonight. I'm assuming it would have been Colby Sorstel, but that would have been like our top option coming into the game. Not our backup. That may have been our top option. I'm assuming the Lions will elevate someone off the practice squad at that tackle position. Max Percher is on the practice squad as well as Connor Galvin. I would assume Connor Galvin's probably the next guy up, and they probably will just for depth purposes because even on the interior, we could probably utilize a little bit of depth. We know Coyote has been added to the 53. We do have a little bit of guard depth there, and then also Jonah Jackson has been listed as questionable for this game. I haven't heard anything to make me believe that he won't play, but if he didn't for whatever reason, we already know Graham Glasgow's already in there. Then we're looking at another potential backup in there at the other guard position, and with that, with this defensive front that they have specifically on the interior, man, they got some players. Obviously, Kenny Clark is kind of that dude, but they have some really good players across this defensive front. So this is massive. We know how much Taylor Decker means to this team. I think it's just great that it's not something that's ending up super long-term here, that we're talking about him playing tonight. So that's huge, man. I'm so happy about this. You don't understand. I'm so happy that he's playing tonight. If that is the case, it'll push Penei Sewell back to the right tackle position, which is an area where I think Penei Sewell is just better, and that's just because he gets more reps there. But then you also look at the edge defenders that they have, specifically a guy like Rashawn Gary on pass downs. He is the guy that you circle. He's the power rusher. He's the guy that had, I got through 3/4 of the Saints game, and 3 times I'm like, oh, there's another hit on the quarterback. That guy is an impact player. So having Taylor Decker back is massive, not only for the run game and how I think it helps improve Penei Sewell, but also for pass protection, because we know it's very likely there are going to be times in this game where we get into an obvious passing down, and we need to have both our tackles out there. So that's the first one. The second thing is David Montgomery. Yes, it is expected that David Montgomery, the running back, will suit up tonight. He's going to be back in the lineup. Now, last week, Jahmyr Gibbs got a majority of the carries. We mixed in a little bit of Craig Reynolds and also a little bit of Bam Knight. It was cool to see him get a little bit of work as well. But David Montgomery, from the little bit that we've seen of him outside of the fumble, man, he's looked as advertised. The guy's ability to just bounce off of tackles, the vision that he has, he is a legitimate in-between-the-tackles runner. Great change of pace from a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, it is an excellent 1-2 on paper, but what David Montgomery showed us in that Seattle game outside of the fumble was like, man, this dude is big time. You get a lot of consistency. You know exactly what you're going to get, and there's also the pass protection added value, and when you have that player in the game, you can put Jahmyr Gibbs at receiver. You can mix it up. You can give a little bit bit creative with some of the looks. And with Jason Kabinda, our fullback, being out for this game, it's really nice to have Montgomery back. And we know against this Green Bay team, I mean, it usually comes down to who can run the football successfully, who can stay on top of the chains, not fall behind, and all of a sudden they're in pass-only situations. Being able to run the ball has always been crucial for us against the Green Bay Packers, and I expect that to be the case once again tonight. Again, I like their interior defensive front. I think at their linebacker position, I don't think they're great there against the run specifically, especially without Devondre Campbell in this game, but we know how important it is to run the football on this team, so David Montgomery coming back, another massive improvement there. And then finally, Emmanuel Moseley. I believe it was initially reported that he was actually going to return tonight, but Dan Campbell spoke on this, saying that they were kind of having the conversations. Do we bring him back this week because he was having limited participation? That's what he was listed as, but there was no real live practice. So do we really put him out there this week, or do we wait till next week when we have a few extra days, because of course you play Thursday, so you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then a full week, potentially some live reps in practice. So it sounds like the Lions are going to lean into that realm. They're going to try to bring him back next week. It would have been great to see Moseley this week. I mean, it would have been fantastic, but Cam Sutton has held it down on some of the top assignments, and I do feel like Jerry Jacobs slowly but surely is getting more comfortable in some of our defensive looks. We're getting a big-time receiver back, it sounds like, but great update still with Emmanuel Moseley. Limited participation this week is what he was listed as, and it sounds like we may get to see him next week, which would be fantastic. Finally, the last couple of updates that we have for the Lions. Matt Nelson, as we said, he is on IR. Big V is also out for this game, so we expect Graham Glasgow to play once again. Specifically in pass protection, he took massive strides last week. We're going to need that to continue this week because, again, that guy Kenny Clark, I'm sure, is going to go at him as much as possible, knowing that that's your backup guard, especially if Jonah Jackson is in the game. And then on third down, they can give you a lot of different looks and move those guys all around the front. Kirby Joseph is also listed as questionable, but last week we saw both Iffy and Tracy Walker step up and handle business. Now with that, I think still having Kirby Joseph would be ideal. It's one of the notes that I actually took when watching back the game. As well as I thought the safeties played, I do think it is still really nice to have Kirby because of kind of the versatility that he adds with those two safeties. The true ability to play as a single high safety and just be a ball hawk back there. Not to say the other guys couldn't do it, but Kirby Joseph does add a different element to the back end, specifically that safety position. We saw it last year, and I do think having Kirby Joseph back in the mix would be really helpful for the Lions. And also, Kirby has shown us some flexibility. He's grown as a man coverage safety. He's also grown as a run defender. I think it would be great to have him back in the mix, likely with Tracy Walker out there, but if he's not, Iffy and Tracy did play pretty well last week, but I will say this, they're going to get tested much more this week than they were last week because Green Bay will take shots down the field. Specifically, they'll take them right up the seam. Tight ends, slot receivers, they're going to get vertical. And now, with seemingly Christian Watson coming back, even if it is in monitored snaps, that is a player that they absolutely, I think, need, because when you watch him, they don't seemingly have that clear-cut deep threat. He is that guy. And getting him back this week, I would assume at very least one time, they're going to try to get over top. So the safety position will be much more key in coverage this week than I think last week, where it was more about what can they do as run defenders, getting aggressive, sliding into the box. Onto the Packers side of things, the big news is this. First off, Christian Watson is expected to play. He injured his hamstring about 4 weeks ago in practice, but he's expected to play with monitored snaps. It also sounds like Romeo Doubs is going to play as well, the other receiver, which in a way has kind of felt like his go-to guy. But Christian Watson just adds a completely different element to this team. And watching the all-22 of the Packers, you just can feel that he's not there. I mean, when they try to take those shots, it just doesn't seem like they have that game breaker. All of a sudden, you had a guy at that size, that speed, and you guys know I love Christian Watson coming out. You had that guy, I think it changes everything with their offense. Even if it's not just what he's doing vertically, but just the speed presence that he has attacking middle of the field. We saw that last year when we get some matchups on him man-to-man, and he would just run away from defenders. That is something that I think they absolutely need back in this offense. I think it'll open up a lot potentially for them and how they seemingly want to play this year. So far this season, 26 receptions that they've had have gone to rookies, whether that be Reed, Luke Musgrave, who's someone I circle because Luke Musgrave will pop here and there, like he's an impactful player, or also Wicks. So a lot of these players are not necessarily super high draft picks outside of Musgrave. Getting Christian Watson back is going to be massive for this team. And then also Aaron Jones. So both teams getting some key players back. Aaron Jones is also expected to play. He went out week 1 against the Chicago Bears on a touchdown play, a 35-yard touchdown. But what we've seen is since he's been down, A.J. Dillon has only averaged 2.7 yards per carry. They've only had 3 runs this year over 10 yards. Now, they're missing multiple pieces on on the offensive line, which of course has an impact on that for sure. And also getting Christian Watson back has an impact on that for sure. But even with that, I don't think their offensive line is that bad. You could hide a lot of these guys as starters, even though they're missing some of their actual starters, which we're going to talk about in a second here. I still think A.J. Dillon is an animal. He is a handful to bring down, but almost like us with Jahmyr Gibbs, you kind of need that change of pace with him. You just need the guy that brings a different element. We know that's Aaron Jones. The biggest part that scares me with Aaron Jones is always what he does as a receiver, because when we like to play our linebackers out wide and we like to man up, Aaron Jones is the guy that they will go at. Now, it's different. It's not Rodgers. Understand that. By the way, Jordan Love, just the way that he throws the ball looks a little bit like Aaron Rodgers now. It's kind of weird. Getting Aaron Jones back, we know how massive he's been every time we've seen this team. They'll get him out wide. They'll take a shot with him and they'll just go one-on-one and trust that guy to win. So you want to talk about getting really two players back that they feel like can win when they're one-on-one? That's something that they haven't had. Move on to the offensive line. David Bakhtiari is once again out, their left tackle. Rasheed Walker has stepped in and played there, and he's actually played really well. According to PFF, he's played 131 snaps, only allowed 2 pressures. I like Rasheed Walker. He was a 7th-round pick out of Penn State a couple of seasons ago. That was the draft that we were at. Rasheed Walker has stepped in, has actually looked pretty good. Really going through and just watching and taking notes of the numbers, not necessarily the player, because I didn't want to have it in my head like, oh, how's this guy performing? You couldn't really tell that Rasheed Walker was a backup. I mean, he was handling his own, specifically in pass protection. I thought they did a really good job in pass protection for the most part against the Saints in their last game. He's been really solid, and also Elton Jenkins, their left guard. So that left side, he is also out as well, which means Royce Newman steps in at that left guard position, which we've seen. I do think he's a guy that you can go at a little bit. Not to say he's just terrible, but he is a player that I would look to attack if you were trying to single out a player on this offensive line. It's a strong offensive line, even without Bakhtiari, but he is a player that I would circle. Finally, Zach Tom, their right tackle, he is questionable for this game. It sounds like it could come down to like a game time decision. He was injured against the Saints in this past game. Heard anything that makes me believe that he won't play. We'll keep an eye on that one because, again, they could be down then 3 starters along their offensive line. Also, Devondre Campbell, as we touched on, he's out, which means Isaiah McDuffie has been getting a lot of snaps in there with Quay Walker. Quay Walker, we know that he is just a freak athlete, and we see that in coverage. Isaiah McDuffie, I think there's some inconsistencies there as run defenders working together, and it's going to come back down to, can the Lions have success rushing the football? That's a lot of times what it comes down to against this team. So I think that is a major loss for them, but it sounds like they're getting a major piece back this week, and that's Jair Alexander. And as Lions fans, we should know all about this dude. This is the type of player to just recognize what's happening, break on the football, understand where you're trying to get as an offense, understand the plan. He is aggressive in zone coverage. He's going to jump routes. That man is a ball hawk. Jair Alexander, I think, is one of the best cornerbacks in the game. And when you looked at their cornerback position, again, they're not terrible. Their secondary, I think, is really strong across the board. We got to see that last season. Last 2 times we played them, we only scored 20. Our highest scoring game was 20 points. So I understood that Rodgers threw some picks, but again, it wasn't like we were lighting up the scoreboard. This is a legitimate defense, and they continue to add pieces to that. Getting Alexander back is also crucial. Rasul Douglas, he's a good cornerback, and I think you can see that when you watch, like, he stands out as their best cornerback. But getting Alexander back with Douglas, that adds 2 really good cornerbacks to the mix. Outside of that, we've seen young guys like Carrington Valentine mix in, the rookie out of Kentucky. So there's been some questionable spots, but getting a guy like Jair Alexander back, one of the best cornerbacks in the game, that is a ball hawk, that will take the ball away, he'll jump routes, he's aggressive, he's physical. That is a huge get back for them. That's the one that I really circle because I just know that he's an absolute playmaker. He's been dealing with it back. He is questionable for this game, but he's been limited participation. He's improved this week, so we'll see. But overall, those are the injury updates that we have right now. That is the news that we have been given. I'm sure this will continue to update, so just stay tuned. Of course, tonight when we do our pregame show or we drop a preview, if I have any more updates, I will give those to you as well. But again, tonight, Lions, Packers, we're going to be live doing our little watch party as usual, and then right after that, we'll be on Bleacher Report to do our instant reaction post-game show. So come check us out. We're looking for 3-1. Thank you, Bob, for watching, and I'm out.